Welcome to today's webinar, Automate Processes Across Platforms with Bridge by Smartsheet. My name is Victor and I'm a Product Marketing Manager at Smartsheet. Our learning objectives today are learning what Bridge is and what it does, reviewing how Bridge is configured, and finally seeing a demonstration of Bridge. Here we see a visualization of what Smartsheet has to offer. In the bottom third of this chart is where many of our users, and likely many of the people on the webinar, have the bulk of our experience. But today we want to focus on the middle of this chart. Smartsheet Advanced is a new way of grouping together users' favorite enhanced capabilities. This makes building better solutions possible, enabling us not only to scale better, but also connect Smartsheet with your essential systems without worry about limitations. Today we're going to be focusing on how we can leverage one of these advanced capabilities called Bridge to help automate processes across platforms. This brings us to the question, what exactly is Bridge? Bridge connects data across the Smartsheet platform and your other business systems. Bridge functions by looking for triggers. Triggers are events or actions like adding rows to sheets or scheduled moments. When a trigger occurs, Bridge works to complete an action. This action can do a number of things like populating new information in a cell or moving information from Smartsheet to another system, which are some of the outcomes that we can drive. Let's explore one of our demo scenarios today to learn some of the fundamental structure and functions of Bridge. Our challenge today involves a scenario where we want to consolidate request sheets across teams into one easy-to-review sheet. Today we have multiple teams and processes that use Smartsheet forms to collect requests across others from our organization. This leads to having multiple request sheets. We want to use Bridge in order to consolidate these sheets and reduce the need for using reports or filters. In this solution, we want to create hierarchies for types of requests our team receives. Smartsheet by default allows us to collect form submissions either at the top or at the bottom of sheets. However, while we've been able to use filters or reports to sort request types, using the hierarchies is a quicker way of navigating a sheet, especially if we have multiple request types and want to consolidate it into one sheet. We'll begin with a form submission. This submission to our sheet is going to be the trigger event, which is going to launch our Bridge automation. As we called out on a previous slide, triggers are events that cause Bridge to perform an action. Once the form has been submitted, Bridge will work through a workflow which is composed of modules. We'll explore modules more in our demonstration, but a module is the mechanism that allows us to push updates from a workflow or pull information into a Bridge workflow. After the Bridge workflow runs, our sheet will update to have consolidated hierarchies for related requests. Let's jump into our demonstration and see our solution in action. Here we see our sheet that we'll be working with today. As we spoke about on a previous slide, what we want to facilitate with Bridge is that when we have different requests come in, we want to sort them automatically into hierarchies as they enter the sheet. Now, we're going to move away from the sheet and into Bridge to see how we're going to be able to make this happen. First, let's get oriented in Bridge. This is our first screen that we see. We see all of the workflows that we have available, but similar to core Smartsheet, when we start out in Bridge, we can begin from a blank canvas and create a totally new workflow. We also have a solution center that offers some templates for examples of different workflows that you're going to be able to create. And we also have a gallery of different integrations, but we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Let's get oriented in this screen. This screen is called the Workflow Designer. We have panels on the left and right hand side of the screen. On the left hand side, we're able to see all of the different elements that we can leverage in a workflow. The main elements we'll discuss today are triggers, states, and modules. On the right hand side, we'll be able to see information specific to the element that we're selecting. We could also view a run log of our workflow as it's in action. Now, the first element that we're going to discuss today is the trigger. Bridge workflows begin with a trigger. The trigger is going to be the event that is going to initiate a workflow. Triggers are very versatile and can happen from in or outside of Smartsheet. In the case of this workflow, we're initiating this workflow when rows are added to a sheet, and specifically the sheet that we were looking at a little bit earlier on. But there's a number of other options for triggering workflows, and we'll be able to see those here. Well, right now we're looking at pre-configured integrations that exist with Bridge. We're also able to add additional integrations to other systems that you may not see here. So as long as the other system or systems that you want to connect to with Bridge have an open API, this might be an option for you when you're trying to connect or hoping to connect to another system. Coming back to our workflow designer here, the next item that I want to introduce to you are states. States are going to be used to organize the steps of a workflow we're creating. You can think of them like labels that are going to give you an indication of what is happening or what's being performed by Bridge. In the case of this workflow, we're naming this state getRow because that's the action that we're going to be performing when we're adding a brand new row to that sheet. This trigger is going to be activated when a row is added to the sheet. And when a row is added to the sheet, we're going to want to get that row and use it for our workflow. Where we use triggers to initiate a workflow and states to explain and understand what's happening, the next type of item that we see in a workflow designer is going to be modules. Modules are going to serve to push updates from a workflow or pull information into a workflow or even manipulate information that's already gathered. The getRow module that we're using here is going to serve the function of looking at our parent sheet and taking the information from that sheet to perform some action, which we're going to determine based off of what we're going to look at next. To be more specific about the information we're going to be taking from that parent sheet, getRow will retrieve all the information from each new row that is added. When we get the row, we're going to want to do something with that information. And this is where we're going to be able to use our junction module to apply some logic. These boxes are going to represent logic, and the logic that we want to apply may vary from use case to use case. But in this case, each one of these junctions is going to represent a different type of request that we're receiving for a different team and the ordering of that information. Workflows don't become static once we create them, so we could also iterate on this workflow. If we wanted to add, for example, a new team or a new type of request that we wanted to handle that sheet, this is where we're going to be able to actually use this panel on the left-hand side, where I can come in and add a new state, and from this new state, we'll be able to branch out and add ultimately new steps that are going to be incorporated. So if we come down to our Smartsheet integration, we'll be able to say that if I were to add a new type of team, a new type of request, I can create the same logic or similar logic to what I have for the other team's requests that are coming in. But let's dive a little bit deeper into one of these examples that I already have built out. Let's review the steps that help get us to this point. So in order to ultimately start sorting the new rows that come in, first we need to add a row into our source sheet, into our parent sheet where that information is coming in. That new row being added is going to trigger our workflow. And when we trigger that workflow, we're going to use our module from Smartsheet to actually collect the information from that row. And now we're going to move that information that we've collected, that row information, forward into our junction where we're going to be able to actually sort it into its correct hierarchy. Now, when we come back down into our PR update row module that we're going to use to correctly put that new row into that hierarchy, we're going to have an option that we're going to be able to select here. Now, there's a number of different things that we can do. We can set up validations. We can do different things with the information, but I want to call our attention to this location piece. And this is where we're going to be able to define a couple of things. The actual parent row. So everything in Smartsheet is going to have an identifier. So we're going to identify the number that's going to relate to that parent row. And then we're going to determine what we actually want to happen when we update that row. And specifically, any time that we're adding a new row that's meant for the PR team, we want to sort it specifically to the top of that parent sheet. Now, we might have other teams here that may prefer it a different way, and this is a good time to actually look over here at our web team. So the requests that are coming in for that web team, we have it set up so that new requests are actually going to sort to the bottom for them. So if we look down here, any new request that comes in for the web team is going to sort to the bottom of the page for them. Now, let's look at all this come together in action. What we're going to see here now is how we're able to handle the different hierarchies across these different requests. So with our PR team, new requests that come in, that group wants them filed at the actual top of the queue for them. That's how they're processing the information, versus our web team that wants the information at the bottom. So let's say that we want to make a new PR announcement for a new product launch. We'll fill in some details that the product launch is in September, and we'll say that I'm going to be the requester, and we're going to put that as a PR request for our team. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this information so we can put that again for the web team. So what we've done is we've submitted this row, this new row's populated our sheet, and in a couple of moments what we'll be able to see is that it's going to actually get reordered from where it is right now to the top of our sheet right under this PR parent. So let's go ahead and refresh that. And we see that update's taken place. Now let's go ahead and try the same thing for the web team so we can see that not only are we going to resort this and put it under its appropriate hierarchy, but where the PR team wants it sorted at the top, we'll be able to sort the web team at the bottom. So let's go ahead and save this change, and same as before, our sheet's going to process, that bridge workflow is going to function, and we're going to be able to see that update take place and reorder this into the bottom of the web hierarchy. Let's jump back to Bridge where we can review some of the components that we've discussed in this first example. Bridge workflows consist of a number of different elements, including triggers, which are going to be the point of initiation of one of these workflows, states, which are going to describe and identify what's occurring at different steps of the process within a workflow, and modules, which are going to allow us to collect, manipulate, move, interact with all the data that we're working with. But to this point, and in this example so far, we've only worked with information that's originated from and lived in Smartsheet. What I want to touch on in this next example is how we're going to be able to leverage Bridge to interact with another system. For our next demo scenario, we're going to pretend that we're part of a global company. And as part of this global company, there's going to be information that we want to communicate from our headquarters that we want to make available to our different team members in the local language that they're going to be speaking. Now, what we're going to use to make this scenario, this workflow possible is going to be our module with Google Translate. And let's go ahead and jump into this workflow to see kind of how it's set up. Now, this workflow is going to be a little bit different than the one that we saw a moment ago, although the looks of it are pretty similar. We're going to begin with a trigger because we're always going to begin with a trigger. There's going to be some action that's going to prompt Bridge to do something. And in this case, the trigger that we have set up is going to be when rows are changed. So we have a sheet, and this sheet is what's going to be kind of the source of truth, the point at which we're going to be able to input information that we're going to want translated for our colleagues that are going to be around the globe. Now, we have a couple of different columns here, and they're going to correspond to the languages that are going to be spoken in different areas. So we have a column for English, a column for French, and a column for Spanish. And we're going to use the information on this sheet to populate a series of regional dashboards. So we're going to have a team dashboard for our team in English-speaking areas, for our team in French-speaking areas, and for our team in Spanish-speaking areas. And all of those are going to be populated and updated from the information that exists here. Now, when changes occur to one of these columns, in our scenario today, it's going to be the English column, we're going to be able to see those updates go across and be translated into the other languages. So let's come back into Bridge. And I want to explore this trigger a little bit deeper. So if we come back into our main page and we open up our integrations, we can see all of the different integrations that are going to translate into modules when we get into that editor that we were looking at a moment ago. And what we're going to be able to see here is our Smartsheet module. And this is where we're able to see all of the different triggers that we have existing. When we create a trigger, we're going to reference that trigger in terms of the name that we want to give it. So we're going to have a Google Translate trigger that we're going to create. We're going to want information for the sheet ID, and that's going to be the means by which we're going to be able to identify the sheet that we're working on. And then we're going to determine what's the event that's going to occur that's going to let us know that work needs to happen. So as our previous example showed, we can do it based off rows being added. As we're about to see, we're going to work based off of rows being changed. But there's a number of other things that we can use to kick off a workflow. Now, we've already configured our trigger within this workflow. So our next step is going to be getting or gathering the information that we're going to need to translate. And we have a module with Smartsheet set up that's saying when rows are changed, we want to collect those rows that have been changed. And once we've collected those rows that have been changed, this is where we're going to want to use our Google Translate module. So similar as to what we'd seen in the last example with modules, when we want to come over and we want to apply a module, it's as simple as dragging and dropping it into the sheet where it applies. Now, we already have our modules in place and our modules configured to do the activities that we need them to do. And we have two different modules that are going to be working today. We have one that's going to translate from English into Spanish and one that's going to translate from English into French. In the process of translation, there's going to be a couple of steps that we're going to go through before we're able to update the translated cells from English to Spanish or English to French. So we initiate with the trigger. The trigger is going to happen when we make a modification to one of the values that we know is going to be changing on a regular basis, like the company announcements, the product announcements. Those changes that we make are going to be pulled into Bridge via this getRow module. So every single time that something changes, that's going to be the indicator, that's going to be the reason for pulling information into Bridge to be translated. That information that we're collecting from Smartsheet, that we're collecting specifically from that sheet that houses all of the initial translations or all of the initial phrases that we want translated, we're going to take that, and now this is where we're going to be able to bring in that Google Translate module. We're going to be able to refer specifically the cells within that row to Google Translate for translation. And we need to do this twice. We need to do it once to go from English to Spanish. And we see that workflow here where we translate from our initial value in English to Spanish. And then we take that value from Google Translate and we update the Spanish row. We're going to do the same thing with French. So if we come down, we make an initial translation from English to French, and then we update the corresponding French column or the French cell with the new value that we've been able to get from Google Translate. Now, what is all of this going to look like in action? I want to come back to the sheet that we saw a moment ago. What I want to do while we're back on this sheet is make a couple of updates, and we're going to be able to see how Bridge is going to be able to pull in the values that we change on this sheet, and then we're going to be able to use core Smartsheet capabilities to update all of the related dashboards. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make some updates to the company news. We're going to say that we're going to offer a complimentary lunch on Friday. And then we're going to make a product announcement, more of a request. Have ideas, submit a feature request. And what's going to happen is when we save those changes, when we commit those changes on the sheet by saving, that's going to trigger Bridge. And in a moment or so, what we're going to be able to do is see that these values are going to update with the corresponding values from Google Translate. And now we're going to be able to actually transition away from this sheet in a moment and see that all of these dashboards that had initially started with the initial values that we began with are now going to be updated with the values that we've gotten from Bridge. And this is, again, another kind of quick example to see how we're able to not only use Bridge to extend Smartsheet capabilities, but also take advantage of Smartsheet capabilities to make great use of what we're able to leverage using Bridge. So let's go to our first dashboard, and what we're going to do is we're going to refresh, and we're going to see that our company news is going to add the new row of the new information, and our product announcements is also going to update. We'll also be able to see this change in French and Spanish. Let's come back to Bridge and review what we saw. We began with a change being made to a cell in English. That change triggered our workflow to start, and we're able to take that information from the cell in English and translate it into both Spanish and French. Now, those changes that we made not only were able to impact the direct sheet, but we were also able to further our reach by leveraging dashboards. And this is a simple example or a quick example of how we can use Bridge in combination with existing Smartsheet capabilities, existing Smartsheet features. You're not limited to just working within the sheet. We're able to build dashboards off of that information. We're able to populate reports. We're able to kick off automations. We're able to extend and build upon the capabilities that already exist within core Smartsheet. So, Bridge as an extension to and enhancement to Smartsheet is a very, very powerful solution that allows you to do a number of things and automate a number of processes, both within but also outside of Smartsheet. Let's jump back to our presentation. In summary, Bridge is a component of Smartsheet Advance. It lives outside of the core components of Smartsheet, but serves to enhance the experience of users by extending Smartsheet's out-of-the-box capabilities and allowing simple and seamless connection to a number of other tools and platforms. If you're interested in learning more about Bridge or Smartsheet Advance, please let us know in the chat or visit smartsheet.com/contact so that we can get you in touch with your account team. Thank you for joining us today. Following our webinar, if you could take a moment to complete our webinar survey, we'd greatly appreciate that. You can also contact our team if you think that Bridge or Smartsheet Advance is right for you. Before we conclude today, I'd like to touch on some of the questions that you asked in the chat. How do I gain access to Bridge? Bridge is an additional add-on to Smartsheet, so in order to add it, you'd want to talk to your account team. They can discuss with you how you can go about adding it to your plan, as well as how you can use it to improve your work processes. What if I want to integrate with a solution that we didn't see today? Bridge is compatible with any platform that has an open API. While we saw integrations that are already available for Bridge today, you're not limited to only those integrations. Can I use Bridge to connect to our homegrown systems? Yes. Yes, with the caveat that if that system has an open API, it should be compatible with Bridge. For a situation like that, I'd certainly encourage you to contact your account team, and they could work with you to try and figure out if it's compatible, and if it isn't compatible, try and steer you in the best direction of how you can get Smartsheet talking to another system. Can I trigger events across sheets? It's a great question. So in this scenario, I'm imagining an activity or some action happens on one sheet, and we want a different event, a different thing to happen on another sheet. That is possible. We are able to do that with Bridge. Can Bridge connect to chat systems? Yes. We have out-of-the-box integrations with Slack, Teams, Workplace, and a few others. You can use Bridge to provide automated response, like a chat bot to guide users to different resources that you may have. And we could also use those chat system integrations to connect other systems to initiate processes within Smartsheet. So an example is if we're working in, say, Teams, and we realize that we wanted to create a new project sheet in Smartsheet, we can use a Bridge workflow to create a sheet all from Microsoft Teams interface. Can I use Smartsheet automations or capabilities with Bridge workflows? Absolutely. You can tailor and enhance your Smartsheet experience and solutions with Bridge. As we saw in that Translate example, we're able to use cells that are updated by Bridge to update dashboards. So you can use cells that are touched by Bridge, influenced by Bridge, with all of your other automations. Do I need professional services to implement Bridge? Yes. So for an initial implementation, we'd strongly encourage a professional services package, and that's something your account team can help walk you through and give you an idea of what to expect. But like other Smartsheet products, once you're familiar with the application, you'll be able to more easily iterate on and configure Bridge to your liking. But as an initial point, we'd really strongly encourage professional services. What integrations and connectors can you do with Bridge? Again, Bridge is really flexible. It's a very flexible tool that you can use to build new connections to most any service with an API or pull from the existing library of integrations that we have. There's a lot of configurations or integrations in there for popular services that you may have seen as we were scrolling through. But we're also setting goals to add many, many more. So that's going to be an area that's definitely going to be growing. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. I appreciate everyone that took the time to engage with us by asking questions, and I hope this session's been helpful. We will be sharing the recording to all participants that joined, and I look forward to seeing you all on a future webinar. Thank you.